The unseen threat approaches. In the latter half of the 22nd century, humanity had advanced far beyond its origins. Colonies were scattered across the solar system, with Mars and Europa serving as the focal points of human expansion. The endless void of space was no longer a place of mystery, but rather one of opportunity and ambition. Technology had taken monumental strides, yet Earth, despite its status as the heart of human civilization, remained unaware of the unimaginable force that now circled its atmosphere. For centuries, humanity had dreamed of exploring the stars, but nothing could have prepared them for what was about to unfold. Earth had grown complacent in its peace, believing that their greatest challenges were behind them. The notion that any alien civilization would dare approach Earth was absurd, especially considering humanity's rapid technological development. The space agencies had long turned their focus toward building alliances, creating diplomatic ties with off-world colonies, and forging a future of interstellar cooperation. Yet, on an ordinary day in mid-September, the unimaginable happened. A fleet of colossal starships, like nothing ever seen before, appeared beyond the moon's orbit. Their sheer size dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. They did not announce their arrival with a flourish of lights or a broadcast. They simply existed, their presence massive and silent. Their advanced technology, built with purpose, shone like a looming shadow over the Earth. As the first images were sent back from the orbiting satellites, the initial disbelief gave way to horror. The Earth Defense Coalition, an alliance of the planet's most powerful military forces, sprang into action. The global summit was called, and within hours, the heads of state from every major country were huddled together. They had little information, no communication, no sign of aggression, just the looming threat of an alien presence. What was their purpose? Were they conquerors, explorers, or something far worse? Among the chaos of frantic planning and uncertainty, General Merrilee, the newly appointed commander of the EDC, stood firm. With decades of military experience, her calm demeanor in the face of such an unprecedented crisis was both a source of strength and anxiety for her team. She knew that this moment would define humanity's future, whether they would be mere survivors or warriors who would protect their home at any cost. The broadcast she was preparing would serve as humanity's first, and potentially last, attempt to communicate. She drafted the message carefully, ensuring that it would be universally understood, regardless of the extraterrestrial species' origin or culture. The Earth, she knew, had to speak as one, projecting a message of unity and defiance. Her voice echoed in the command center as she instructed the technicians. "I want this message to be heard by every corner of space. No more mistakes. We need them to know that Earth is not just another planet to be conquered." The message was clear and unyielding. "Attention visitors from beyond our solar system. This is General Merrilee of the Earth Defense Coalition. You are currently in orbit around Earth, a sovereign planet with no interest in hostile engagements. We are aware of the Galactic Empire and your expansive history. We advise you to maintain a peaceful distance and refrain from any form of aggression. Consider this a warning. Stay away from Earth." Every language known to humanity was used, spoken and written, from English and Mandarin to languages lost to time, even those conveyed through mathematics and music. The broadcast spanned across frequencies and even tapped into the deep space communication channels. No one could doubt the seriousness of Earth's stance. The planet wasn't about to bow to anyone, least of all a foreign empire. As the message was transmitted, Earth collectively held its breath. The planet's skies, once a symbol of human hope and aspiration, now felt more like a battlefield. No one knew what would happen next, but everyone understood that the stakes could not have been higher. Days passed with no reply. The silence was deafening, a pressure that weighed on every soul on Earth. Were the aliens studying the message? Did they even understand it? Or worse, were they preparing for war? The tension across the globe continued to rise as military forces stood on high alert, scanning the skies for any sign of movement. Satellite images kept sending updates of the alien fleet, stationary and unmoving, a silent threat hovering just beyond Earth's reach. General Lee spent her nights in the command center, analyzing data, coordinating defenses, and speaking with the world leaders. Each report brought more questions than answers. The fleet had yet to make any move, aggressive or otherwise. But that silence was just as ominous as an attack. What are they waiting for? Mara muttered to herself as she reviewed the latest data. The unknown was more dangerous than any weapon. Then, as if on cue, something changed. A sleek, smaller craft detached from the main fleet. It was nothing like the immense warships that hovered above Earth, yet its presence sent a ripple of alarm through the EDC. The object moved slowly toward Earth, a clear indication that the Galactic Empire, or whoever these beings were, had at least some form of intent. They were not just visitors, they were testing humanity's resolve. Mara Lee's instincts kicked in. She knew that this was the moment when everything could shift. A potential war could erupt if the wrong decision was made. Earth could not afford to be complacent any longer. The fleet had not responded to the warning. And now this ship, the first real movement they had seen, threatened to escalate things. Within minutes, global communication lines buzzed to life. The EDC's defense systems, designed to protect Earth from asteroid impacts and rogue satellites, were now being repurposed for a far more imminent danger. Anti-spacecraft missile systems, deployed across various regions of the world, were ready to intercept any threat that dared to breach the atmosphere. America, Russia, China, and the European Union, now united in their defense, had positioned their resources as a show of force. The ship, seemingly unarmed, was moving closer, and the fate of humanity rested on the edge of this encounter. General Lee's heart raced, but her face remained composed. She issued orders for the immediate readiness of Earth's defense systems. There was no room for error. A new phase of Earth's history was about to begin. The silent encounter. The ship continued its steady approach toward Earth. A single craft, its surface gleaming like liquid mercury, now moved gracefully through space, undeterred by the surrounding military forces. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The ship's form was not angular like Earth's starships, nor was it traditional in its design. It seemed as though it had no regard for the principles of aerodynamics or military strategy. Its structure defied all known physics, sleek and organic, as if it were an extension of the void itself. The world watched with bated breath. News outlets broadcasted the same images of the ship's slow advance across every channel. Every government in the world, from the smallest to the most powerful, was focused on this singular moment. The message humanity had sent out to the universe had been met with this cryptic response, a response that seemed almost too peaceful, too deliberate to be considered a threat. General Mara Lee sat at the heart of the Earth Defense Coalition's command center, staring at the massive holographic projection of the ship's trajectory. Her mind raced through countless scenarios, trying to decipher what this silent encounter could mean. Was it a scout, a reconnaissance mission, or was it a probe, sent to gather intelligence before the larger fleet made its move? "We don't have the luxury of guessing, General," said Colonel Javier Cortés, Mara's right-hand officer. His tone was terse, his eyes narrowed. "We need to assume that this is a test of how far they can push us." Mara nodded, keeping her gaze locked on the screen. It had been 5 days since the initial appearance of the alien fleet. No one had received any form of communication from them. And now, the lone ship seemed to be circling Earth, studying, probing. She knew their patience was being tested as much as their resolve. A wrong move, a hasty decision, and it could all spiral into war. Her thoughts were interrupted by a new update. The ship, which had been steadily moving in Earth's direction, had stopped. It lingered just outside the planet's atmosphere, hovering as though waiting for something. The EDC's tracking systems had locked onto it, but it made no aggressive move, no hostile maneuver. "We're not alone," Mara muttered, glancing over to the holographic map on the table. An uneasy silence fell over the command center. Before they could analyze further, The quiet was shattered by the sudden ping of incoming data, an encrypted transmission from the ship. The message was unlike anything anyone could have expected. Mara's hand instinctively reached for the communication console, her heart skipping a beat. The transmission was encoded in a language that wasn't just alien. It was a series of harmonic tones, fluctuating in pitch and rhythm, a form of communication through sound. The command center erupted in activity as technicians scrambled to interpret the sequence. "Is it music?" Colonel Cortez asked, his voice full of disbelief. "Not just music," Mara replied, her mind racing. "It's a language, a complex one. Whatever they're saying, it's more than just a message. It's an invitation." The room fell silent. An invitation. The possibility that this encounter wasn't one of aggression, but a form of communication, stunned everyone present. Was it possible that the alien civilization had been waiting for humanity to respond, to engage in this unique, non-verbal way? Mara immediately ordered that the transmission be forwarded to the highest-level linguists and communication specialists from around the world. Hours passed as they analyzed the harmonic code, seeking to find patterns, similarities, or familiar structures that could lead to some sort of understanding. At midnight, a breakthrough came. Dr. Helen Yates, a leading expert in interspecies communication, had cracked the code. It wasn't just random fluctuations in sound. It was a sophisticated form of dialogue, with clear patterns. The tones, she explained, were akin to the intonations used in some of Earth's ancient languages, but they carried a deeper meaning. The tones weren't just sounds. They were emotional, conveying states of being, like colors in the sky. It was the closest thing humanity had ever encountered to a universal language. A series of synthesized harmonic tones filled the command center speakers, soft and warm. To an outsider, they might have seemed gentle or even soothing. But to those who were trained in decoding the message, it was anything but casual. The message they now deciphered held a weight that no one could have predicted. "We are not your enemy," the tones seemed to say. "We are watchers. We are the keepers. We seek to understand. We seek a union of knowledge." The meaning behind the message was both simple and profound. They were not conquerors. They were observers, travelers, explorers with a purpose that went beyond conquest. The fleet that hovered around Earth, silent and still, was merely the first step in their desire for communion with humanity. Dr. Yates turned to Mara, her face pale with shock and realization. They want us to speak. They want us to trust them." Mara swallowed hard, her mind in turmoil. This wasn't a war, but that didn't mean it couldn't turn into one. Humanity, in all its pride, had always viewed itself as the dominant force in the universe, a species that had overcome every challenge to reach the stars. Now, faced with something far more ancient and far more advanced, it was clear that humanity's assumptions had been shattered. "We need to respond," Mara said, her voice barely a whisper. "But we must tread carefully. This isn't a game. We're dealing with something far greater than anything we've ever encountered." The world's leaders, convening in the newly established Global Coalition for Alien Relations, debated furiously. Some urged caution, proposing that humanity send a defensive response, more military buildup, more weaponized displays of strength. Others advocated for engagement, for cooperation. An opportunity like this might never come again, they argued. Humanity could learn, grow, and evolve. Perhaps join the ranks of this greater cosmic civilization. In the midst of these discussions, one question emerged that could not be ignored. What if their peaceful overtures were merely a ruse? To answer that, General Mara Lee knew there was only one choice. Earth would extend a hand, cautiously, wisely, and with full awareness of the risks. They would offer a message of peace, but one tempered by the understanding that no peace was ever guaranteed. As the world held its breath, Mara composed the reply. "We will not fight. We seek understanding, knowledge, and perhaps partnership, but we will not be ruled. We will not surrender." The transmission was sent, and as the words left Earth's atmosphere, No one knew for certain what the next chapter would bring. Would these keepers, these silent visitors, truly offer a union of knowledge, or was it all part of something much darker? The answer, it seemed, was still hidden in the stars. The invitation. The days that followed were a blur of anticipation and uncertainty. The world seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for a response. The alien ship had not moved, still hovering just outside Earth's atmosphere, as if it were watching, waiting for something. The skies were clear, the world's nations uneasy, unsure whether this silence was a gift or a prelude to something far more ominous. General Mara Lee spent sleepless nights in the command center, watching the flickering lines on the tracking monitors, her mind consumed by questions. What did the keepers truly want? What if their invitation wasn't one of peace, but an elaborate ruse, a test of humanity's weaknesses? Could the emotions embedded in their tones be trusted? These were questions no one could answer. No one could know for sure. Mara leaned forward in her chair, hands pressed together, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of Earth's orbit. The ship was still in the same position, almost as if it were studying the planet in detail. No movement, no further transmissions. It was as though the fate of Earth had been put on pause. At that moment, an unexpected sound filled the command center, an incoming message. It was a series of harmonic tones once again, this time more complex, layered with deeper, resonant frequencies. The air seemed to vibrate with them, heavy with an energy that made everyone in the room pause. The technicians scrambled to decode it, but this time, it was different. There was a sense of urgency, a rhythm that seemed almost like a call to action. Dr. Yates, the linguist who had decoded the initial message, worked feverishly to understand. "This is not just a message," she said, her voice barely audible, almost in awe. "It's a pattern, a request, but not for knowledge. They want something else. This is an invitation, but not in the way we thought." Mara felt her pulse quicken. She knew what this meant. The keepers weren't just sending a message. They were offering a choice that could change everything for humanity. "We need to act," Mara said, her voice commanding. "Prepare for a response." Colonel Cortes, ever vigilant, stepped forward. "General, we can't make this decision lightly. If they want to meet, we should be cautious. They may be expecting us to come to them, but we can't ignore the possibility of a trap." "I agree," Mara replied, her eyes narrowing in thought. "But we can't wait forever. The longer we hesitate, the more likely it is that they will interpret our inaction as a rejection, or worse, a sign of fear." She turned to the room. The world was looking to them for leadership. No one else had answers. All they had was their trust in each other, and the knowledge that their choices now could either unite humanity with an advanced alien race, or seal its fate. As the decision loomed, it was clear that Earth's leaders had different opinions. The United Nations convened an emergency meeting, with delegates from every nation present. There was heated debate, arguments about whether to engage in this unprecedented encounter or to prepare for a more defensive approach. The divide between nations was growing, as were the voices of skepticism. While some were eager to make contact, others viewed this as a potential threat they couldn't risk ignoring. At the head of the table, President Amelia Grant addressed the assembly. "We have a choice," she said, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of responsibility. "We can reach out and extend the olive branch, risking everything, or we can fortify ourselves and face the consequences of standing our ground. But if we do nothing, we risk losing everything." Mara knew that this decision was bigger than any one leader, any one nation. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of every person on Earth. It was a test of their ability to unite for something greater than themselves. While the diplomats argued and strategized, Mara stood by, watching the unfolding drama with a sense of inevitability. Whatever the decision, they would all have to face it together. It was then that the unthinkable happened. The ship, which had been dormant for days, suddenly began to move. Its movement was graceful, fluid, no jets, No visible engines, just a shifting of space itself as it glided toward Earth. There was no warning, no declaration of intent. It was as if the keepers were inviting the planet to meet them halfway, bridging the distance between them. Mara immediately ordered a full military alert, sending out drones and defense units to monitor the ship's descent. If this was the moment of truth, they couldn't afford to be caught off guard. But her instincts told her this wasn't a military invasion. It was something far more profound. The world's eyes turned upward. Every news channel, every digital screen, every eye in every corner of the world turned to the sky as the Keeper's ship began to break through the atmosphere. The atmosphere crackled with energy as the craft descended. And then, as it entered Earth's lower orbit, it stopped, hovering directly above a remote, desolate region of the planet. There was no fanfare, no sign of force, just stillness. Then came the final transmission, the one they had all been waiting for. It was not just another sequence of harmonic tones, but a visual projection, a massive holographic image that filled the sky for miles. The projection showed a landscape, nothing like Earth's. The terrain was vast, barren, with strange structures rising up from the ground, unlike any city or architecture humanity had ever seen. The sky was swirling with colors, a blend of blues, purples, and golds, shimmering like liquid light. And in the center of this projection, a single figure appeared. A humanoid form, tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to shimmer like the surface of a distant star. Its face was serene, unreadable, and its eyes, vast, like the depths of space itself, gazed directly at Earth. "This is our invitation." The figure's voice resonated, not through speakers, but within the minds of everyone who watched. "Come, join us. We offer knowledge, unity, and peace, but we require one thing: that you understand your place in the universe, your connection to it, and the responsibility that comes with such understanding. You are not alone in the cosmos. Will you answer the call?" The voice was not just a question. It was an echo, a reverberation that stirred something deep within the hearts of those who listened. It was as if the very fabric of space itself had opened up and asked humanity to step forward, to embrace the unknown, and to understand the purpose for which they had been chosen. General Mara Lee stood in awe, her mind racing with the weight of this moment. The ship's descent, the message, the figure, all of it was a deliberate invitation, one that humanity could not refuse without consequence. The world had just been given a choice, an opportunity to meet the Keepers and learn from them. But in the back of her mind, Mara knew the stakes. The knowledge they offered could change everything for humanity, transforming it into something greater, but also revealing its deepest flaws, its darkest truths. The invitation was clear, but the real question remained: was humanity ready? The decision. The days following the Keeper's invitation were a whirlwind of intense deliberation, fear, and hope. The entire world was now caught in a collective moment of indecision. Governments, world leaders, and the people themselves stood on the precipice of something unimaginable. The choice was theirs, but the weight of it seemed unbearable. For the first time in history, humanity found itself united in a single question: what would we do next? General Mara Lee, ever the pragmatist, stood at the heart of the decision-making process. She had seen the fear in the eyes of her fellow leaders, the same fear she felt inside herself. The Keeper's offer was tantalizing, yet terrifying. A promise of knowledge, unity, and peace, but at what cost? And was the world truly ready for the responsibility of such a revelation? Mara sat in the war room, surrounded by military advisors, political leaders, and the intelligence community. The holographic displays flickered in front of her, showing the Keeper's ship still hovering in Earth's lower atmosphere, their presence undeniably real and undeniable. It was a silent, omnipresent force that no one could ignore. "The world is watching us." President Amelia Grant's voice echoed through the room, her tone carrying the weight of leadership. "If we do nothing, we risk alienating the Keepers and perhaps losing our only opportunity for peace and advancement." If we engage, we risk everything. We risk revealing ourselves to an unknown power that may not view us with the same benevolence they claim. Mara nodded, taking in the gravity of her words. The decision to engage wasn't just a matter of diplomacy. It was a matter of survival. Could Earth, as it was, withstand the consequences of such an encounter? Could humanity handle the truth of its place in the cosmos? Let's not forget, Mara said, addressing the room, that the Keepers could have invaded at any moment. They could have destroyed us all, and yet they chose to send an invitation. This could be a sign of goodwill. But we cannot assume this is their only purpose. Colonel Cortés, ever the skeptic, leaned forward. General, we need to be pragmatic here. This is not just a matter of trust. The Keepers' technology is far beyond anything we have, and they could manipulate us in ways we cannot even comprehend. They might want something we can't even begin to fathom. Mara's gaze hardened. She knew Cortés had a point. The Keeper's ship had descended with an eerie calm, their technology unfathomable. The very fact that they had communicated using telepathic resonance suggested a level of intelligence that far surpassed anything humanity had ever known. What did they want with Earth? And if they were truly offering peace, why had they chosen humanity as their first contact? Yet there was another part of her, the part that felt the weight of humanity's collective potential, telling her that this was an opportunity that couldn't be ignored. What if the Keepers weren't just offering peace? What if they were offering something more? Something that could propel humanity forward into a new era of enlightenment? And then, as if to answer her unspoken question, the Keepers sent another message. It arrived not in harmonic tones, but in a stunning visual display. Across the sky, massive holograms appeared, projecting the history of the Keepers, vast, ethereal beings whose civilization spanned millennia. Their story was one of unity, of transcending the limitations of their physical forms, of evolving beyond war and suffering. The holograms showed their journey from a dying world, one plagued by war and division, to a race of beings who had merged with their technology and the very fabric of the universe itself. They had become explorers of space, not conquerors, seeking knowledge and understanding, forging connections with countless other civilizations across the stars. But then the holograms shifted, showing a darker side to their past, a warning. Their message was clear. Every race they encountered had faced a test, a moment of reckoning that defined whether they were ready to ascend to the Keeper's level of understanding, and every race that failed this test had been left behind, forgotten, abandoned. This revelation sent a ripple of shock through the room. Mara watched the holograms closely, her mind racing. The Keepers were not just offering peace, they were offering humanity a choice: transcendence or destruction. It was a test, but one that had no clear answers. The truth was, no one knew what the test would be, or how Earth would fare. The implications were staggering. If humanity failed this test, if they were deemed unworthy, the consequences could be catastrophic. But if they succeeded, if they proved themselves capable, they would join a cosmic community, a civilization that spanned the stars, and they would be gifted with knowledge and technology that could solve the world's greatest crisis. For the first time, humanity was faced with the choice of evolving or remaining stagnant, of stepping into a new era of enlightenment, or staying locked in the cycles of history they had always known. General Lee, President Grant said, her voice quiet but firm, "We must make a decision. The Keepers are waiting. The world is waiting." Mara's mind raced as the room fell silent. What could she do? What choice could she make? "President Grant," Mara said slowly, her voice carrying the weight of the moment, "we must respond. We can't let fear guide us. The test the Keepers speak of may not be one we can understand yet, but we must face it. Humanity cannot afford to shy away from this opportunity. We have always been a species that has risen to the challenge. It's time we did so once more." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. It was a choice that no one could take lightly, but it was a choice that had to be made. The invitation had been extended, and there was no going back. "We will respond," Mara said, her voice filled with resolve. "We will take the next step forward. But we will do so with caution. We will prepare ourselves, mentally and physically, for whatever lies ahead." The decision was made. Earth would engage. Humanity would reach out to the Keepers, not with fear, but with hope. Hope that they could prove themselves worthy of the gift that was being offered. The future was uncertain, and the path forward unclear, but one thing was certain: the test had begun. As the days passed, preparations were made. The world's best scientists, diplomats, and strategists were brought together to form a unified team, one that would represent humanity in this unprecedented encounter. They would travel to the site where the Keeper's ship hovered, where the test would begin. Mara stood before her team, ready to face the unknown. "We've always believed that we were alone in the universe," she said, her voice strong. "Now we know we are not. And we have the chance to prove that humanity can rise above its flaws, its divisions, its fears. We have the chance to show the Keepers and the universe that we are ready." And with that, the final preparations were set into motion. The time had come for humanity to meet its future. The test. The journey to the Keeper's vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. It wasn't just a physical journey. It was a voyage into the unknown, a test of everything that humanity had come to know about itself. The world watched in anticipation as news outlets broadcast live feeds of the event. From the moment the decision had been made, the entire planet had united, each person holding their breath, wondering what would come next. General Mara Lee led the mission herself, a select team of scientists, diplomats, engineers, and strategists at her side. Their ship, a sleek, advanced transport designed to withstand the unknown, slowly ascended towards the hovering mass of the Keeper's vessel. The sheer size of it was overwhelming, dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. It was not a ship in the traditional sense. It was a floating city, a vessel that seemed to be part organic, part technological, its surface alive with strange, iridescent patterns that shifted like living veins. As they neared the ship, the air seemed to thrum with an energy that was almost tangible. It was as if the Keepers were watching them, aware of every movement, every heartbeat. The team felt the weight of this invisible gaze, and for the first time in their lives, they understood the true meaning of being observed by an intelligence beyond their comprehension. The shuttle docked with the Keeper's ship, and the team disembarked. The air inside the ship was cool and sterile, but there was a strange comfort in its calm. The walls pulsed with light, a soft glow emanating from within, creating an atmosphere that was both alien and welcoming. The Keepers themselves were nowhere to be seen, but the feeling of their presence was unmistakable. "We are here," Mara said, her voice steady, though she could feel the tension in her body. This was it, the moment of reckoning. The test was about to begin, and none of them knew what it would entail. A figure appeared before them, not a physical being but a presence, an entity that materialized out of the air itself, its form shifting between lights and shadows. It was like nothing any of them had ever seen before, neither human nor alien, a perfect blend of energy and thought. It was the Keeper, the representative of this mysterious race. "You have come." The Keeper's voice resonated inside their minds, a sound both calming and unnerving. "The test begins now. To prove your worth, you must first face your greatest enemy, yourselves." The words sent a ripple of confusion through the group. General Lee stepped forward, her hands clenched at her sides. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice unwavering despite the uncertainty in her heart. "The greatest enemy is not an external force, General," the Keeper replied. "It is not the enemy that you have fought in wars, nor the one that lurks in the shadows of your fears. It is the enemy within, the deepest part of your soul that holds you back. Humanity has always struggled against its own impulses, greed, hatred, fear. To ascend to the next stage, to join us in the cosmos, you must first confront these internal conflicts and prove that you have overcome them." The room fell silent. The weight of the keeper's words hung heavily in the air. This was not a physical battle. It was a battle of the mind, a confrontation with humanity's very nature. Each member of the team felt a surge of unease. Could they truly overcome their darkest selves? The keeper continued, its presence unwavering. You will face 3 trials, each one designed to confront the core of your being. Each trial will reveal a part of you that you must confront and transcend. Fail, and you will be left behind, as many others have before you. Succeed, and you will rise above the limitations that have held you back as a species. Mara exchanged a glance with the team. They had prepared for many things, but this was something they could not have anticipated. To confront their deepest flaws, could they do it? Was humanity even capable of overcoming its own darkness? The first trial was announced. The trial of fear. The room around them shifted, warping and twisting. The very air seemed to vibrate with an unsettling energy. Mara suddenly found herself standing in a desolate wasteland, the sky a dull, oppressive gray. A chilling wind whipped through the air, carrying with it the smell of death. She looked around only to see the faces of the people she cared about, her family, her closest friends, lying motionless in the dirt, their bodies ravaged by some unseen force. But there was something more sinister. As she stepped closer to them, their eyes opened, and they began to speak in whispers, their voices filled with sorrow and accusation. Mara, why didn't you stop it? You could have saved us, but you chose to leave the war. Why did you let this happen? The voices grew louder, the accusations mounting until they drowned out all other sound. Mara fell to her knees, her chest tightening as the weight of guilt and responsibility bore down on her. This was her greatest fear, the fear of failure, of not being able to protect the people she loved. She reached out, but they recoiled, their faces twisted in anger and betrayal. She wanted to scream, to explain, but the words caught in her throat. But then, amidst the chaos, a calm voice broke through the storm. It was her own voice, strong and determined. You cannot let them control you, it said. You are not defined by your past mistakes. You must rise above them, for them and for yourself. With a forceful breath, Mara stood, pushing the voices aside. She didn't have to be bound by guilt. She didn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. The past could not define her. She had a future to create, and she would not let fear hold her back. The landscape shifted again, and Mara found herself back with the team, the trial behind her. She had passed, but it wasn't over yet. The next trial awaited. The trial of greed came swiftly. The room around them morphed into a lavish golden palace. Expensive jewels glimmered in the light, and riches beyond imagination surrounded them. In the center of the room, a pedestal held a single glowing artifact, an object that promised unimaginable power, a power that could change the course of history. Mara's gaze locked onto it. She could feel its allure, the temptation to claim it, to use its power for good. But then she saw the faces of the people again. This time, they were suffering. They were torn apart by conflict, divided over the very riches she had sought. Nations waged wars over resources. Lives were lost in the pursuit of wealth and power. Mara stood frozen, caught in the storm of desire and duty. The artifact shimmered, promising the power to change the world. But at what cost? Is this worth it? The keeper's voice echoed in her mind. Would you sacrifice your humanity for power? Would you allow greed to consume you, knowing the consequences? Mara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She knew what was at stake. Power could destroy everything that she had fought for. She let go of the temptation, turning away from the artifact, choosing the greater good over her own desires. The room shifted again, and the trial was over. And then the final trial, the trial of hatred, was revealed. A confrontation with the very thing that had plagued humanity throughout its existence. The hatred that divided nations, that fueled wars, that consumed the hearts of millions. This trial was unlike the others. It was not a test of strength, but of compassion, of the ability to overcome the primal urge to destroy what one could not understand. It would be the hardest trial of all. The final decision. The atmosphere shifted once again, the world around Mara and her team dissolving into a swirling vortex of emotions and memories. They were no longer standing in a physical place, but in the very heart of humanity's history. A history marked by conflict, division, and at times, violence. The trial of hatred was upon them. As the swirling lights and shadows faded, Mara found herself standing alone in a barren battlefield, the air thick with the smoke of war. The ground beneath her was scorched, littered with the remnants of broken lives. Bodies of men and women, young and old, from different walks of life, all victims of hatred's poison. In front of her stood a figure, a person she recognized, but had not seen in many years. Her brother, Kian. His face was hard, eyes cold, and his posture carried the weight of someone who had experienced too much pain. But there was something in his eyes, a deep sadness, the same sadness she had seen in the eyes of those lost to conflict. "Kian?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer at first, his gaze distant, as if he were staring through her. Then, slowly, he turned to face her. The look in his eyes was not of recognition, but of accusation. He was a mirror of her past, the brother who had once been her closest ally, until the world had torn them apart. "You failed me," Kian said, his voice low and filled with bitterness. "You failed our people. You chose your path, and I was left behind. I fought to protect us, but in the end, all that matters is who has the power. And you, Mara, you chose to bow to the system. You chose to abandon what we once believed in." Mara's chest tightened. The words stung, but they weren't just Kian's words. They were the words of every person who had ever felt betrayed, left behind, or forgotten. They were the words of every faction, every community, every tribe that had ever been torn apart by hatred and division. In a way, Kian represented humanity's darkest side, the side that refused to forgive, the side that could never let go of its grudges. "Is this who we are, Kian?" Mara asked, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Is this all that we've become? People who cannot forgive, who cannot heal, who cannot see beyond the things that divide us? I know the pain you feel. I know it because I've felt it too. But we cannot let that pain turn into hatred. We cannot let it define us any longer." Her words hung in the air between them, thick with the weight of years of history, of conflict, of struggle. For a moment, Kian didn't speak, his eyes flickering with something that might have been doubt. But then the hardness returned. "You're wrong, Mara," Kian said, his voice sharp. "There is no forgiveness. There is no peace for people like us. You can talk all you want about unity, but at the end of the day, it's about power. The strong survive, and the weak are left behind. This is the world we live in." Mara took a step forward, her heart racing. She knew that this moment would define everything. She could feel the pull of the past, the temptation to sink into the same cycle of hatred, to lash out and blame. But she couldn't. Not anymore. "You're right," she said softly. "There are powers at play that we cannot control. But what we can control is how we respond. We can choose to fight hate with love, division with unity, destruction with creation. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But we have to try. We have to believe that change is possible." Kian's face contorted with frustration. "You don't understand," he growled. "You can't just wish for change. You have to fight for it. And if you're not willing to fight, then you're just as guilty as everyone else." The air between them crackled with tension. It felt as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for one of them to break. But Mara stood her ground. She wasn't afraid anymore. The keeper's words echoed in her mind. "This is the test. You want to fight, Kian," Mara said, her voice rising, filled with conviction. "Then fight for something worth fighting for. Fight for the future. Fight for peace. Fight for something greater than yourself. It's not too late to choose a different path. I know it's hard, but we can do this together." The battlefield around them began to shift again, the smoke clearing, the broken bodies fading away. The faces of the fallen were replaced with images of people coming together. Different races, different cultures, different backgrounds, uniting, working side by side, building something new. It was a vision of hope, of what could be, if humanity chose to rise above its hate and fear. Cayenne's expression softened for a moment, the anger in his eyes dimming. He looked around, as if seeing the vision for the first time. But then the hardness returned, and he turned away. "You're wasting your time," Cayenne said quietly, his voice carrying a note of sorrow. "Maybe you're right, maybe there's hope, but I don't know if I can be part of it anymore." With that, Cayenne faded into the air, leaving Mara standing alone. She watched him go, feeling the weight of his decision, the finality of it. There was nothing more she could do. The test was over. And yet, the world was not finished with its judgment. Mara and her team were returned to the ship, their bodies and minds exhausted from the trials. The Keeper was waiting for them, its presence as imposing as ever. "You have completed the trials," the Keeper said, its voice echoing in their minds. "You have faced the darkest parts of your souls and chosen to transcend them. You have passed, but the true test is still ahead." The team stood in silence, uncertain of what would come next. "Humanity has reached a crossroads," the Keeper continued. "You are now at the threshold of something greater than yourselves. But the choice to move forward is yours to make. The future of your species rests in your hands. Will you choose unity, peace, and progress, or will you fall back into the darkness of your past?" Mara looked around at her team. They had passed the trials, but the journey was far from over. The future of humanity, of the entire galaxy, was uncertain, and they had to decide what role they would play in it. She knew what she had to do. "We choose to rise," Mara said, her voice firm and resolute. "We choose to face the future together. We choose hope, and we will fight for it." The Keeper's presence seemed to soften, as if pleased by her answer. "Then you have passed the test. Humanity has shown that it is worthy of the stars." And with that, the world around them dissolved into light. The trials were over. The decision had been made. Humanity had passed the test. The stars were within reach.